Limit is x goes to 3 of 3x minus 9 plus the sine of x minus 3 over x squared minus 3x. The first thing we're going to do is plug a 3 in for each of the x's. That will give me 3 times 3 minus 9 plus sine of 3 minus 3 divided by 3 squared minus 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9 minus 9 plus sine of 3 minus 3 is 0 divided by 3 squared, which is 9, and then negative 3 times the positive 3 is a negative 9. 9 minus 9 is 0. Sine of 0 is 0. 9 minus 9 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0 over 0 indeterminate form. We'll have to rework this. Since we have trig functions as well as power functions, we will have to make use of the identity. Limit as theta goes to 0 of the sine of theta over theta equals to 1. The first thing we're going to do is separate the numerators over that common denominator so that we can start to isolate the sine function. So we will have 3x minus 9 divided by x squared minus 3x plus sine of x minus 3 divided by x squared minus 3x. Now both of these fractions as x goes to 3 are 0 over 0, and each are going to be worked out in their own respective way. The first fraction is power functions. We're going to try a factor and cancel method for that fraction. And then the second fraction has a sine function. We're going to isolate it. So limit is x goes to 3. So the first function, we're going to factor the numerator by factoring a 3. We're going to factor the denominator by factoring a common factor of x. And nicely that will give us an x minus 3 over an x minus 3, which is what was making 0 over 0 for that particular fraction. Those can cancel with each other. For the second fraction, we're going to isolate the sign so that we can phase match to make the identity. So we're going to put the sign in its own fraction. It's in the numerator. The x squared minus 3x is in the denominator. We'll put it into the other fraction. They're multiplying each other, still equals the original. And now we phase match. We have the sign of phase x minus 3 in the numerator. To phase match, we put an x minus 3 in the denominator. And therefore, to compensate, we will put an x minus 3 in the numerator of the other fraction. Those x minus 3's would cancel, and it would go back to the original. So now we have limit is x goes to 3 of 3 over x, which is no longer 0 over 0. Sine of x minus 3 divided by x minus 3, which is 0 over 0, but we have the identity, and the limit of that will be a 1. And then we have x minus 3 over x squared minus 3x, and that is 0 over 0. But because those are power functions, we can do a factor and cancel. Now the x minus 3 doesn't factor at all, but the denominator has a common factor of x, and we can factor that out. And we can now cancel the x minus 3's, leaving a 1 in the numerator. So that will give us limit as x goes to 3 of 3 over x plus sine of x minus 3 over x minus 3 times a 1 over x. We have now eliminated all the 0 over 0's except the phase matched sine function, which we know that limit's a 1. We can make that limit a 1, and we can now plug a 3 in for the remaining x's. That will give us 3 over 3 plus 1 times a 1 over 3. So we have 3 over 3 plus 1 over 3. These already have a common denominator. We can combine them together, and it will equal to 4 over 3.